stood as the unstoppable force in his world, feared by all as the greatest legendary assassin to ever exist. Surprisingly, that very man had now become just a regular high school student. Despite appearances, his abilities remained unchanged, and his habit of being absent persisted. As if it were just another ordinary Tuesday, she unleashed a relentless assault on the gang of thugs. After eliminating his enemies behind the scenes, he embraces a calm and ordinary existence as a typical high school student. To understand how he arrived at this point, it's necessary to revisit his past. The most formidable assassin to ever exist was undertaking his last assignment, preparing to disappear from the world of hired killers forever. After setting his sights on Chairman, he sprang into action, determined to capture his chosen target. The character demonstrated supernatural speed, moving quickly enough to respond to bullets almost instantly. He removed anyone who stood in his way. Realized escape was impossible for him this time, and desperately pleaded for his life. Both an assassin and his closest companion eliminated the man on his behalf. Assigned by their organization to eliminate, they carried out the mission by shooting the chairman and considered their task complete. Soon after the deed was done, cast a quick look at the display on his phone. He noticed a picture showing him together with his daughter. He decided to leave behind his violent past and formally stepped away from a life filled with killing. Arrived at his house, where his cherished girlfriend eagerly awaited him, ready to prepare a delicious dinner. As made his way back, he couldn't help but express admiration for his remarkable skills. Despite being the most feared assassin, believed that his notorious reputation actually made their dangerous job easier. He is already overcome with sadness, knowing that his closest friend is leaving for good. The young man had finished working hard at his job, and now longed for a simple, ordinary life. Everything began to change after he started dating. He longed for a quiet, content life by her side, with their dog John bringing a gentle comfort he had never truly known until now. Believes that life will be challenging for someone trained only in the art of assassination, since his entire experience revolves around taking lives. Unexpectedly, the cold-hearted killer. He was also a romantic at heart, eagerly planning to ask his girlfriend to marry him in the near future. After arriving back at his house, 2G appeared stylish and embraced his fresh start, ready to settle into an ordinary life. He fidgeted anxiously, his nerves showing as he got ready to see the person he loved. The metallic scent of blood unsettled him, filling him with a growing sense of dread. He hoped to begin a fresh chapter alongside. Just as he rushes forward, his aspirations are instantly crushed. Lay motionless in a crimson pool, his loyal dog by his side. Feeling defeated, he approaches her, wondering what might have led to this outcome. Feeling's presence close by, he reached out to his best friend. The speaker admired his keen awareness of those tracking him. However, the organization refused to allow someone like to enjoy a peaceful retirement. Believed that stood in the way of their ambitions, so he ended her life, which in turn allowed to gain his freedom. Moved by Odin's command, he finished off just as his opponent lay defenseless. Feeling a deep sense of regret, they mourned the absence of the most skilled assassin. During his last moments, faced the bitter truth. He understood that someone like him would never find a peaceful conclusion or experience an ordinary, joyful life. Due to his actions, the person he loved ended up facing punishment meant for a merciless killer whose ambitions had gone beyond all limits. He remained unaware until a chorus of voices began to whisper in his mind, offering their assistance even as he drifted in unconsciousness. The voices sounded strange and unrecognizable to them. He kept his eyes closed for a long moment before slowly opening them again. This time, however, he has shed the identity of the assassin. He was no longer fading away beside those he cared about. Panic surged through the boy as he struggled in vain to get out of bed. His eyesight remains unfocused until he glances at his own reflection in the mirror. In that instant, it became clear he was an entirely different person. Where once stood the most notorious and merciless assassin of his era, now remained only a boy, stripped of his former menace. Learns that he has successfully passed every one of his exams. Over the last month, his rehabilitation process had shown steady and promising results. The doctor, with evident delight, announces that the boy's lost memories are expected to come back once he resumes his normal routine, suggesting that has suffered from amnesia, although this represents only one perspective of the situation. The only thing that stayed in the mind of this Korean John Wick was the final moment he could recall. He gazed in despair at the lifeless body of the girl he loved, lying motionless in a pool of blood. He was accompanied by his beloved canine companion. Once feared as the most lethal assassin longing to escape his shadowy existence, found himself betrayed by the only person he had ever trusted. Suddenly, he found himself inhabiting the body of a child, his new self nothing like the ruthless killer he used to be. Overwhelmed, he realized there was a complicated web of problems he needed to sort out. During his time in the hospital, he managed to connect various bits of information he had gathered. It seemed that was the person who originally possessed this body. On his journey to school, he met a tragic fate when he was struck down by the infamous truck. The individual endured a critical brain injury so severe that only urgent surgical intervention could save their life. After spending an entire month in a coma, he eventually regained consciousness. Unlike before, showed a sincere interest in understanding the surgical procedure and its execution, taking the place of in expressing curiosity this time. He remained completely unaware of the events that unfolded soon after his death. The final memory lingering in his mind was of someone assuring him that 2G's mind remained completely intact. After piecing together the clues, Bro comes to the startling realization that his mind has been tampered with in the same way is known for. Uncertainty clouds his mind as he tries to grasp what truly happened after he died. A wave of intense feelings sweeps over him. The once merciless assassin, now overcome with sorrow, allows tears to stream down his face as he mourns both his lost love and the future happiness that slipped away. Was released from the hospital and made his way to his parents. Overwhelmed with emotion, begins to weep, her relief clear as she embraces her son who has finally come home unharmed. Taro, his father and a manga artist, also felt joy and relief as his son recovered quickly. His mother felt anxious about his memory loss, her concern clear in every glance she gave him. Meanwhile, her husband attempted to comfort her, expressing confidence that would recover and things would return to normal once he resumed his usual routine. Filled with excitement, they looked toward their son, eager to hear what he thought. Unlike the others, 2G feels only a deep sense of dread instead of excitement. He realizes that his sense of self is now closely connected too. If anyone with ties to the events surrounding his life became involved, the situation would soon grow more tangled. For the time being, he flashes a cheerful grin at his parents, giving them confidence that he will be just fine. Deep inside, however, the most lethal assassin has decided to remain inconspicuous for the moment. The scene swiftly shifts to the moment when they reach their house, and at that instant is genuinely taken aback. It became clear to them that the child came from a wealthy background, judging by the enormous size of the house. It became clear that his father was far from an ordinary manga creator. In fact, his work had brought him considerable fame. Perhaps he had penned a series as popular as Solo Leveling, even if some would point out that's technically a. On top of that, his mother came from a family with a distinguished medical background, adding another impressive note to his lineage. Pointed the boy toward his room, indicating where he should go. After tripping over the threshold, paused to take in his environment, his eyes scanning the area. The assassin observed how meticulously organized the room appeared. The arrangement was flawless, and in truth, nothing had really changed. The room resembled that of an ordinary teenager in high school. Thinking back to his parents, he recalled how they anxiously visited their son in the hospital, unable to hide their worry. Their constant presence showed just how much meant to his family and how deeply they cared for him. The memory brings to the assassin's mind his girlfriend's single wish, that he would find happiness. The assassin had never known this kind of happiness, his life having kept such feelings out of reach. Assassin 2G hoped more than anything to avoid living in a way that would let down his parents. he unexpectedly comes across a photo that captures his attention. For this occasion, not only were the boy's parents present, but an additional family consisting of 3 members had joined them as well. Judging by the situation, the assassin realizes he must gather as much information as possible about the boy's history. The next morning brought an unfamiliar guest. A woman arrived in an extremely long limousine simply to see, even though he had only left the hospital the day before. Her determination to visit him was clear, likely due to how much history they shared. The boy's father steps forward and pushes the door open. He saw his bright smile directed at him. Clearly concerned, she approached to see how her friend was feeling and inquired about his activities. Just as the boy's father prepares to respond, glances inside and suddenly recognizes as the girl from the picture he had seen earlier. Without hesitating, the girl wraps her arms tightly around him in a warm embrace, showing her worry for his well-being. Felt happiness watching them connect with each other, just as they always did. The boy attentively watched how everyone responded, analyzing their expressions until he realized that was likely his childhood friend. She felt eager and hoped to offer him a ride to school, yet declined, suddenly aware that her family was even richer than his. Taro attempts to intervene, but forcefully pushes the man into the car, assuring everyone that she will handle his condition. She faced the group once more, sharing the news that a celebration would be held in honor of his recovery. Both of his parents, still amazed by what they had witnessed, returned to their tasks as the 2 friends began their journey to school. During the school day, a group of rough-looking troublemakers, appearing as if they spent their lives on the streets, prepared to put their scheme into action. Their leader had his sights set on causing problems for. Despite their concerns about facing consequences for injuring Steve Jobs' daughter, his friends remained fearful. Shot his clowns a fierce glare, making it clear that he thought they were behaving cowardly without any real justification. The character realized that by accepting payment from a certain individual, they had become too involved to back out, leaving them with no option except to carry out the task. They found themselves facing people exactly like that. While the group continued plotting their schemes, his high-end escort made an entrance. This time, however, they notice with astonishment that a boy is standing beside her. Goons revealed that he was nothing more than an ordinary person, someone who had known her since they were kids, and that he had been involved in an accident not long ago. Upon hearing the news, curiosity is piqued, and he approaches quietly, a grin spreading across his face. As the scene shifted and separated, each heading toward their respective classrooms, the assassin paused briefly, reflecting on her character. In his mind, she was a caring companion who watched over him with the warmth and protectiveness of an older sister. As stepped into his new classroom, he caught a brief glimpse of what an ordinary life might feel like, something he had never known since he had never gone to a real school before. The boy, unaware of the situation, approached and searched for his seat, while a classmate greeted him with a cheerful expression, clearly pleased by his arrival. The man's expression shifted, his cheerful smile fading into a look of something entirely different. A wave of fear washed over him as he noticed the imposing figure of looming just behind. The menacing bully targeted him, using his size to intimidate. The speaker asserted that did not belong in the class and insisted that would be leaving with them. A short time later, the group leads him outdoors, while unaware of what's happening, wonders aloud if he even has a desk there. Remembered how the others had laughed at him before, and he realized they were probably playing a trick on him now. With the group now focusing their attention on him, his irritation grew. He insisted on being told the location of his seat, his frustration clear. Meanwhile, and his followers watched the scene unfold with amusement, finding his annoyance entertaining. The delinquent approaches the unsuspecting boy and presents him with a harsh choice. He taunts that if the boy is willing to kneel and plead, they might let him go after giving him a mild beating. The troublemaker seems bitter, likely because prefers over him. Went so far as to warn the boy that approaching her would result in both of their deaths at his hands. The situation felt almost comical, considering he was making this threat to someone who seemed as dangerous as John Wick. Pauses to process what's happening, his face falling as he realizes with regret that these troublemakers really do mean him harm. He felt a deep sadness, not because of what he had done, but for the unsuspecting people who would soon fall prey to his actions. The assassin, now inhabiting the boy's body, hoped to avoid causing harm to anyone and aimed to start living honestly. As a final warning, he explained in a composed manner that retracting his statement would allow them to resolve the situation without conflict. Naturally, the comment infuriated the messy-haired blonde, making him react as if he were suffering from a serious stomach ache after a questionable meal. The man, radiating intense energy, lunged forward with his fist extended, determined to end the boy's life in one decisive blow. The king, with his unwavering confidence, quickly gauged the path of the oncoming attack. He silently judged his opponent as nothing more than an inexperienced amateur, noting how the clumsy punch left countless vulnerabilities exposed. Barely needed to move, effortlessly shattering's confidence with just one punch, since the attack came at him so sluggishly. She understood that the circumstances demanded decisive action. With flawless technique, he delivered a swift palm strike upward, connecting with his chin. The attacker hurled him to the ground with a powerful judo throw, leaving his body limp like a... He suddenly noticed how strangely calm the real world felt compared to the chaos he was familiar with. Some time later, hurried over to help him. The character soon understood that the man was actually gathering energy beneath the blazing sunlight. It became clear that he was not the one at risk. Instead, he was the true threat. Stared in disbelief, struggling to recognize the boy before her as the she had grown up with. Feeling powerless, wonders aloud whether he is the one who knocked them all down. Initially, the boy felt unsure and tried to explain himself by saying he got caught up in an unnecessary argument. Meanwhile, word of the incident had already reached, prompting her to hurry to the rooftop out of concern for his well-being. She struggled to accept that someone as harmless in appearance as could have played a part in such a violent altercation. Notices a faint smear of blood staining his collar and immediately wonders if he might have injured himself without realizing it. Despite this, he reassures himself that there's nothing wrong and insists inwardly that he feels completely fine. Overwhelmed with concern, lashes out at him, her voice trembling with frustration over how much he made her worry. Her concern shifted from anger to sorrow, as she struggled to come to terms with the thought of him being harmed. The assassin, uncertain about the situation, expresses regret despite not knowing what occurred. They choose to go back to class for the time being. As they began to depart, caught the faint whispers coming from the battered blonde. He was furious and began plotting how he would get back at his enemy. The story shifts to the lively party that had organized for the evening. His parents presented bottles of champagne and arranged a spread of delicious-looking dishes across the table. The thought crossed their mind, wondering if a famous chef-like had been brought in to handle everything. As the boy's parents shared a joyful laugh, they savored the happiness of the moment together. Found his thoughts drifting back to memories of his cherished girlfriend, recalling how she would always greet him with a warm smile and gently encourage him to finish his meal without delay. Upon listening to what she said, the man's focus shifted instantly. Instead of acting like a relentless fighter, he became completely absorbed in devouring his food. Their dog gazed eagerly at the meal, clearly hoping for a taste as well. That same evening, visited his girlfriend. A sense of curiosity filled them, as they imagined whether sharing a joyful time with their own family would feel like this. That familiar emotion now fills his present self, allowing him to truly understand the comfort of an ordinary life for the first time. Despite being the one who originally suggested the party, hadn't arrived on time. The boy's father remarked that had been facing difficult challenges lately, yet she always managed to hide her struggles behind a courageous smile. Without warning, an uneasy sensation began to rise within the boy, as though his instincts were alerting him to an impending danger. Feeling inquisitive, he glances at his phone to see what might be there. He noticed his childhood friend was calling out to him. He resumes the conversation by inquiring about how she is feeling. He recognized the familiar voice of the troublemaker from before. The punk feels relieved that the boy understood so fast and sends him an invitation to meet at a particular place, sharing the exact coordinates. If declined their demands, they planned to ensure that would suffer the repercussions of his decision. Incidentally, the same girl and her chauffeur were currently being held captive, proving that he was completely serious about his threats. Shouted desperately from behind, begging him to stay away. Despite her pleas, the boys had already learned what they needed. It became clear to him that would be in danger unless he intervened quickly. He decided to request directions, and the delinquent responded enthusiastically, providing the information without hesitation. The conversation over the phone comes to a close soon after. Pretended he was speaking to someone else on the phone, deliberately ignoring her presence. He let his parents know that he needed to step out briefly to run an errand. Confidently promises the others that his return will not take long. The story shifts to a shadowy, deserted factory, occupied by almost a dozen menacing figures armed and prepared to attack him. Not only had the leader of the organization shown up, but his bodyguard could also be seen in the background, nonchalantly focused on his workout routine. The man feels furious that went through the trouble of making it. He ignores the call and, in frustration, forcefully throws a can at his face. He wanted to remain unnoticed, but being summoned unexpectedly threatened to expose him. The villain admitted to seizing, claiming he was simply following instructions from his organization. Their goal was to extract confidential details from her about her inheritance. Despite everything, she remained unbroken, repeatedly insisting that she was unaware of any information. The primary motivation behind reaching out to her closest friend was, in fact, this very reason. It was the same boy who constantly lingered near her, and the others believed that by threatening to harm him, she would be compelled to reveal the truth. By completing the task as instructed, he would achieve success, and as a result, would be granted his official position within the organization. The head of the organization accepts the arrangement, but cautions the blonde-haired member about the consequences of failing his mission. Known for his brute strength rather than his words, stands silently, his intimidating presence serving as a warning. The man's sole directive was to eliminate his target, a fact he made clear when he hurled a dumbbell with such incredible force that it smashed straight through a wall. The very presence of filled the blonde boy with such fear that he nearly lost control, knowing that any mistake could make him the next target. His angry outburst only escalated the situation, as she taunted the others and worsened her own predicament, while her assistant anxiously attempted to soothe her and prevent further trouble. Took control of the situation, overpowering him and forcefully knocking him down with a powerful kick. Fury surged within them at the realization that another person was attempting to interfere in their relationship. He instructed his subordinates to escort her assistant away from the area, and then turned his full attention to. She tried to reassure the girl, making it clear that if she remained silent, her childhood friend's life would be in danger. Despite her vulnerability, the girl admits through her actions and expression that she remains completely clueless about what he means. Seething with anger, demands that be brought before him immediately. At that moment, their group included 40 armed thugs and an ex-wrestler known for having killed someone during a match. Confident in his prediction, the believed that the kid had no chance of winning. He was sure that would be stopped by, and eventually would be forced to tell the entire truth. The scene transitions to the young man as he arrives at the factory. Gathered outside, a group of unsuspecting people waits, unaware that they are moments away from falling prey to him. As the boy strolled by without a hint of worry, one member of the group suddenly realized that he was the person they had been searching for. However, his actions come too late, as the man swiftly incapacitates them with a sharp, agonizing blow to their necks. In a matter of seconds, all 3 men were swiftly overpowered and lay defeated. The remaining thugs surged forward without hesitation. It turned out to be a disaster for them, as the high school student easily overpowered and defeated everyone. One of the boys was pushed forcefully into the trash bin. Fixed the thugs with a deadly stare, making it clear that anyone who crossed into his view risked losing their life in the world of One Piece. The legendary treasure One Piece truly did exist. Meanwhile, Boss began to worry about the absence of the boy, speculating whether he had lost his nerve and chosen not to come. Considering his age, The boss wondered if his hesitation was simply a result of being so young. Only the blonde troublemaker was aware that his opponent on the rooftop had not been a teenager, but something far more sinister, a demon. He attempts to convince his leader by explaining that their adversary is no ordinary foe. Just then, the sound of the workers outside the factory reached them, their voices loudly chanting his name. Stood in disbelief, her surprise plain to see even as she remained unable to see. The fair-haired boy trembles in fear, convinced that his life is in grave danger. The door bursts wide as a man's body hurtles through the opening, tossed aside as easily as a crumpled piece of paper. The object came to rest just beside Shoes. With excitement gleaming in his eyes, the muscular enthusiast pivoted to face his intended opponent. At the same time, the boy, who appeared innocent, made recall the caution he had been given before. The man struggled to restrain his power, determined not to accidentally end the lives of his opponents. Mr. stood in disbelief, trying to comprehend how a single child managed to defeat 20 gang members without any help. With a relaxed motion, straightened his tie to project confidence, then insisted on being allowed to meet his friend. His terrified cry echoed through the factory, her mind racing with fear at the thought that he might have come specifically for her. Because of the sound of her voice, he can tell she is precisely 30 meters in front of him. Relief washes over him as he realizes she is safe. He surveyed his surroundings, searching for any signs of the dangerous men preparing to ambush him. In what seemed like less than a minute, the man darted across the room with such incredible speed that it left everyone else stunned and unable to react. He stunned his superior with skills that seemed almost supernatural. He swiftly defeats each opponent surrounding him, crawled along the ground, clearly humbled by the harsh consequences of their actions, finally understanding just how badly they had miscalculated. A sense of dread about dying hangs heavily over him while the boy seizes. He clenched his hand into a fist, silently vowing to put him through a great deal of pain. Within seconds, the man unleashes a rapid flurry of punches, each one striking with incredible speed. With exact precision, his collarbones, lower ribs, and elbows were broken. The unbearable pain seemed endless, yet the man effortlessly shoved him against the closest wall, intensifying his agony. Mr. Screw stood frozen with fear, dreading the possibility of facing their formidable opponent. Desperate to escape, they considered fleeing, but Mr. quickly reminded them that they were being paid to see the job through. Begins to understand just how serious the situation has become. Instead of hunting an innocent child, they now face a terrifying creature. Because a blindfold covered his eyes, she remained unaware of everything happening around her. He approached her, offering comforting words that promised everything would turn out fine, just as he prepared to loosen the ropes binding her. The behemoth thrust his massive fist forward, aiming to strike his opponent. The punch landed with a powerful impact, delivering a forceful blow. Let out a terrified scream, her voice filled with panic. Considered the possibility of winning, feeling hopeful because the ex-professional wrestler's incredible build seemed almost unbeatable. However, much to his disappointment, once the dust cleared, it became obvious that his punch had completely missed its target. Responded with a swift counter kick, halting his opponent's advance and forcing him to stop where he stood. The crazed wrestler showed no concern and got ready to launch another assault. However, manages to deflect it in a different direction. The attacker follows through by landing a powerful punch directly to his opponent's face. His fist smashed into his opponent's face with such force that it broke the wrestler's nose. Yet despite the pain, the wrestler remained convinced that strength would not be enough to bring him down. After clashing several times with his opponent, the assassin realizes that this man is clearly the most formidable among them all. Due to his present body being that of a teenager, he found it difficult to defeat his opponent in a single blow as he usually could. As a result, he decided to try an alternative approach. Just as the wrestler prepared to deliver a powerful blow to his opponent, the young man transformed into the Flash and vanished from view in an instant. He aimed directly for us. From that moment forward, began to rain down a relentless series of powerful blows. Everyone focused their attacks on one spot, driving their knees and fists into him repeatedly until the muscular individual is overcome with fear. He loses consciousness, earning the nickname David for defeating a much stronger opponent. They watched in shock as their unstoppable wrestler was easily overpowered and defeated. The last 6 men decided to flee as quickly as possible, making what was likely their wisest choice yet. Normally would eliminate his targets without hesitation, but at this moment his main concern was. He swiftly loosens the ropes that bind her. He smiled warmly, showing his contentment at seeing her in good spirits. He calmly explains to that everything is being handled and that her assistant will be all right as well. Naturally, experiencing such a distressing event was far from ordinary for someone like her. This causes to question whether she feels frightened. Instead of expressing gratitude, she unexpectedly seizes his tie and unleashes her frustration on him for choosing the most terrible route possible. Instead of taking the simple route of contacting the police or seeking help from adults, he chose to make a dramatic entrance and single-handedly face off against 40 men. Despite everything, felt deeply thankful for his willingness to shield her, though it hurt her each time he risked his safety for her sake. Once again, she found herself in a condition that echoed constant concern. Had habitually urged to come back home, her heart always burdened by the fear that one day she might lose him. Meets her gaze and assures his friend of his commitment. He promised himself that he would never give her a reason to worry about him again. The peaceful atmosphere is suddenly broken by the pained groans of the unfortunate victim who had been attacked without cause. Noticed the wailing of police sirens in the distance, quickly understanding that law enforcement had arrived and signaling to everyone that it was time to head back home. Meanwhile, on another part of the battlefield, narrowly got away, struggling to understand why even the strongest fighter had failed to hold back the terrifying child. It turned out that this man reported to someone even more powerful, a shadowy figure who ruled over the criminal underworld. This fearsome leader disclosed that he had dispatched someone named Lancelot to handle the young person. Since the boy had interfered with the schemes of the Great Will organization, consequences were now inevitable for him. Before any of that unfolds, the focus shifts back to the boy. He lies on his bed at home, recovering, fully aware that his decision to venture out alone caused his parents a great deal of concern. As they rested peacefully through the night, recalled the concern etched on his parents' faces when he came back home. Fortunately, since he had not been involved, the police saw no reason to question him. The true purpose behind the thugs' actions remained unclear to him, leaving their intentions shrouded in mystery. After the incident, the leader named vanished as well. He appeared convinced that an even greater threat was hiding just out of sight. While jogging outdoors, he reflects on his determination to protect those close to him from harm. Without warning, several objects came flying toward him, making him leap up into the air in surprise. The shooter stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend how the boy had managed to dodge his bullets. Had been aware that he was being trailed on his way home, and that was the very reason he had ventured out to this spot, making himself an uncomplicated target for the person shadowing him. Shifted his attention toward the man, silently wondering what intentions lay behind his actions. The unsettling man found himself genuinely surprised that the boy had managed to detect his presence, even within the safety of his own room. Never before had anyone uncovered his secret in such a manner. With this realization, it became clear that this child was far from ordinary. Acknowledged the spy's skill, noting that this opponent had carefully erased any evidence and operated far above the crude criminals he had previously encountered at the factory. Based solely on those 2 observations, it became clear that this individual did not fit into the patterns of ordinary society, raising the curious question of what motivated him to observe the other person from the start. Stalker felt a sense of admiration, suspecting that the young boy might have ties to the same profession as himself. Despite everything, the boy chooses to live simply, holding on to his life as a regular high school student. Unwilling to waste time on further conversation, the man readies his swords, determined to face his opponent in a final, decisive battle. The setting brings back memories for the main character, reminding him of experiences from a past existence. Standing before him, the assassin solemnly announced that time had come to an end. This individual, known as from the Great Will Organization, held the rank of 67. Shifted into a fighting stance, his mind recalling the days when he had belonged to that very organization as well. They decided to go to the headquarters of the Great Will Organization. Council members simmered with frustration, realizing that despite going as far as kidnapping, no useful information had come to light. Reflected on the situation, believing that sending a lance from the beginning would have made the mission much more efficient. Shifting perspective, the importance of this organization came into sharper focus. The group held the power to plunge the world into turmoil, as they commanded a legion of 1,000 assassins beneath their control. Within this group, the most skilled 100 assassins earned the prestigious rank of Lance. These lances had such impressive records that they almost always completed their missions successfully, and shared this elite status with the others. Discloses their quest for a legendary treasure said to alter the fate of the world. A mysterious artifact known as Seed was believed to be the present possessor of the sacred treasure, even though there was no proof to support this claim. Despite the lack of evidence, disclosed that he had already dispatched to handle the task. The news startles them, as they know that wielding a lance demands Odin's approval first. However, the important detail was that had already secured the necessary approval. To begin with, they realized that his bodyguard was completely unreliable, making it impossible for him to be responsible. This led them to suspect that the circumstances were more complicated than they currently grasped. He considers their foes dangerous and intends for the lances to remove them. The story shifts to where comes to the realization that his opponent is a fellow member of his own group. His posture demonstrated a mastery that was hard to interpret, clearly marking him as a top-tier lance. This revelation validates the fears that the boys had been trying to ignore. It became clear that the organization operating behind the scenes was orchestrating all of his problems. The situation extended far beyond a mere dispute over inheritance and hinted at much deeper motives at play. Studies the boy's posture closely and realizes he doesn't look like a typical high school student. The boy appears completely unafraid, standing calmly even with a weapon aimed at him, as if such danger is nothing new. Aware of the looming danger, recognizes the individual as a significant threat. Driven by determination he rushed forward, aiming to bring his opponent down. The seasoned assassin, however, effortlessly the initial barrage of blows. He notices that the young opponent moves with remarkable speed, targeting his vulnerabilities with impressive precision. Observing from this perspective, he realizes that appears to possess the deadly skill of a seasoned assassin. Despite appearances, is no laughing matter. The man comes dangerously close to driving a blade into his face. This made the boy keep his distance from the others. During their short meeting, picked up some insight into the unique way his rival fought. Skillfully kept his opponents at a distance, using his reach to control the fight. Watching him, the assassin couldn't help but admire how talented the young fighter was. She chooses to take the initiative, propelling herself upward with a sudden leap. The situation shifted dramatically as the assassin, who initially attempted a butterfly slash, swiftly adjusted his posture, aiming to overpower the young protagonist with a new approach. Feels a surge of satisfaction as he observes his opponent skillfully evading each move with expert precision. At the same time, the boy began to notice how much weaker and slower he was compared to his opponent. He understood that facing someone like this would require a different strategy to win. He begins by carefully observing everything around him. As Lance, a skilled member of the elite, pressed forward with a powerful attack. He believes he has at last found an opportunity to launch his attack. However, to his great surprise, as he delivers the finishing strike, nonchalantly shrugged off his jacket, letting it slide from his shoulders. With a swift and calculated motion, he drove the blade directly into the man's neck. Against all odds, the lance slipped away from danger at the last possible second and counterattacked with a swift swing. Is struck as the slash slices through him. Crimson drops trickled downward as he recognized the formidable strength of the lance before him. At that moment, he became painfully aware of how his own body, lacking both strength and training, left him at a disadvantage. The lance finds himself admiring the boy's clever effort to ensnare him. The narration explains that flawless techniques clearly reveal his expertise in battle, though he seems to be missing the ruthless drive to kill. He had been told only to eliminate a high school student, and now he finally understood the reason a skilled assassin like himself was chosen for the task. Explained that the student posed a danger to the group's plans involving, making it necessary to carry out the assassination immediately. Felt sure that the organization was involved in everything after hearing the confession for himself. The assassin made up his mind to change his fighting style and then triggered his combat mode. He struck a confident pose, making it clear that he had no intention of restraining himself and was prepared to reveal the raw force of his deadly resolve. Charged forward, unleashing his wild and unpredictable dragon dance technique. Hundreds of blades were sent flying toward the boy, each one threatening to strike him down. The lance, driven purely by instinct, relentlessly stripped the bark from a tree, his movements swift and effortless. At the same time, searches for and settles into a secure place where he can remain hidden. He soon understood that he was facing an opponent far superior to any ordinary assassin. The wild tornado tears through his shelter. A powerful burst of water erupted like a geyser. He endured yet another wound on his body. Comes to the startling conclusion that the person facing him atop the lance possesses S-class abilities. The relentless onslaught of his attacks proved nearly impossible to withstand, leaving even the protagonist unable to escape without injury. Loses control, furiously blaming the high schooler for being a murderer as well, and questions whether it would be acceptable if became an unintended victim. At that moment, the man made a serious mistake. That single remark was enough to send spiraling into a vivid flashback of his most traumatic memories. This time, however, he saw his friend's face instead of his girlfriend's. Fueled by anger, he charged straight at the assassin, determined to confront him directly. The forceful blow knocked the blade from his grasp. He snatched it up and then darted forward, slicing a swift, precise line across his opponent's shoulder. Everything unfolded with such speed that even Lance, despite his expertise, couldn't figure out where things had gone awry. His mind is consumed by thoughts of the terrifying child he's facing. The boy is determined to avoid the pain and remorse he endured before. He vows to safeguard, even if it costs him his own life. The Lance believes that opposing him would be futile. He faced his destiny, knowing that his life would end according to God's plan. Even with one shoulder already defeated, he remained determined to keep fighting. From this point forward, his relentless attacks would have no effect. Skillfully countered every blow, demonstrating the precision and experience of a true veteran. The high schooler was being called out for lacking courage. During one of his attacks, he exposes himself defensively, serving as a harsh reminder of his own limitations. Swiftly moved in behind his opponent, delivering a sharp cut to the man's thigh. As he attacked, he mocked the professional assassin for making so much noise. Having been diminished to such a condition, a few wondered how her opponent had managed to become so quick so suddenly, even though they were both relying on the same strategies as before. The opponent attempted to overpower the young protagonist, but his efforts backfired, resulting in a disastrous outcome for himself. His left arm was covered with numerous fresh cuts, making it clear that he had already anticipated every move and saw no reason to continue. Launched forward with astonishing speed during his following assault. Transforming himself into a spinning force, he cut through everything in his path until he reached. With a deadly look in his eyes, he decides that the Lance's fate has been sealed. Many people in the crowd continued to wonder how anyone could possibly achieve such mastery. With incredible precision and almost supernatural speed, the knife moved through the air. His fighting style brings to mind the fierce aggression of the top assassin in their group. Tore the man's body apart with relentless force, leaving only remnants behind. Blood spilled rapidly, forming a dark pool beneath him. The battle had ended, and came to the painful understanding that he had been no match for his opponent from the start. While he gasped for breath, the lance shook with fear. He realized he was completely paralyzed, unable to move at all, because the tendons in his arms had been cut. The young man showed a bit of mercy, sparing one of his opponent's legs so he could still manage to get around. However, the relentless fighter made it clear that the other's days as a lance were over, guaranteeing he would never take another life again. With cutting cruelty, points out that this method would strip the assassin of the most cherished piece of his identity. The boy believed that such a destiny was even more terrible than dying, since those affected could never fit in with ordinary people. However, before abandoning the injured man, he announced that he had 2 questions to ask and threatened to slice the man's remaining leg if he refused to respond. He begins by asking for the identity of the person responsible for giving the command, as well as the particular reason the girl has been singled out as their target. Let out a foolish giggle, and made it clear through his actions that no amount of torture would make him speak. He takes his life, bound by an unwavering devotion to the only God he has pledged to serve. He remained steadfast, determined never to go against his own convictions. Hearing God's name mentioned, felt certain that all his suspicions were true. Suddenly, the sound of blaring sirens echoed throughout the area. His impulsive actions ended up drawing the attention of the police. During that short moment, the man uses his single leg to make a quick getaway. The child needed to leave as well, so he wouldn't be discovered. Before departing, questions internally whether the boy truly desires a normal life as a typical high schooler. The question sends him drifting back through his memories. Recalled how those around him believed he would never know an ordinary life, all because he had spent his years as a ruthless assassin. Despite being drenched in blood, the uncertainty refused to leave his mind. He wondered if he could truly call himself normal or even fit the role of a typical high schooler. The answer to that troubling question still remained out of reach. The scene transitions to the headquarters, where receives the latest news concerning. Explained that the lance had been broken down so thoroughly that he was unable to make any further progress with his work. Watched in awe as defeated a skilled assassin, his face lighting up with excitement at witnessing such impressive abilities. Acknowledged that the figure they had encountered could only have been a monster. Had compared the man's motions to those of, mentioning the name as a point of reference. Among all of them, one stands out and captures everyone's attention. Believed it was an exaggeration to place this person on the same level as the greatest knife user in history. Could relate to their annoyance, particularly since name carried significant weight and was never mentioned without good reason. Steps in to interrupt the argument, while complains about how important and unique 2G is. Despite everything, it becomes clear to them that unexpected bodyguard has shown remarkable strength. He not only foiled their schemes, but also managed to defeat an adversary of lance-level skill. Due to this new turn of events, and the rest of the group realize they cannot afford to hesitate any longer. Found herself puzzled, trying to unravel the enigma that surrounded. The boy quietly returned to his room, tending to his wounds in private where no one could see him. He was struggling to figure out who he really was. He remembered that he was meant to live as a regular high school student now, not as the assassin he once was. He now faced the difficult task of helping avoid being noticed by the organization. On top of that, his troubles would only grow since taking down a lance had made him an even bigger target. Realized that his current physical condition would leave him struggling, so he made up his mind to train hard and regain his former strength. To protect the tranquility he cherished, he realized he must take every possible action to keep it secure. Eager and enthusiastic, steps forward to offer his services to the Great Will organization, demonstrating a strong desire to pursue the enigmatic man as his chosen target. The group reacts with surprise, yet believes that such a threat warrants this kind of bold approach. Since someone of this caliber could rival 2G, a standard spear wouldn't be enough to deal with him. Intrigued, eagerly took advantage of his authority to neutralize such a dangerous opponent. The man in question was no ordinary foe, He held the impressive rank of 9th overall and was renowned as one of the top assassins in existence. A full day had gone by since had been taken. Returned home from the hospital to find his parents and the girl throwing a joyful celebration in his honor. To express his affection, the boy's father offers him that he spent a great deal of effort preparing. Despite these claims, the meal appears so unappetizing that it's difficult to imagine anyone worked hard on it. Following that, reveals that she has prepared something particularly special just for him. She set a steaming plate of savory beef stew before him, her smile full of pride as she encouraged him to try her creation while the food was still warm. As soon as the flavor touches his tongue, the boy's mind was suddenly flooded with memories of an earlier moment, recalling the day he left home and questioned whether he would return late yet again. On that occasion, he had reassured her that he'd make it back in time to share dinner. He simply had to encounter an individual and collect a few items, never revealing any hint of his real occupation. Felt a surge of happiness upon hearing the news, especially since she was preparing his favorite beef stew that day, a gesture that filled him with joy. Before leaving, he looked at her with intense eyes, promising to reveal something significant to her upon his return. She said goodbye to him, her treasured smile lighting up her face as she cradled Johnny Boy, who was also grinning in her arms. As ate the beef stew, a wave of sadness washed over him because he had never had the chance to confess to her that he planned to leave his life as an assassin behind so they could be together. Noticed his look of disappointment, which irritated her, and she questioned whether the taste had truly been that unpleasant. Despite his earlier hesitation, the boy unexpectedly began devouring her food as if he might never have another chance to eat again. Fighting back tears, he expresses to her how delicious he finds the taste. Felt relieved by the news, and his mother assured him that plenty more food was available if he remained hungry. While he observed his father accidentally ignite the pan, and noticed beaming with joy as she savored the cake. The hero felt deep gratitude, cherishing the warmth and affection his family always showed him. Later on, he accompanied as she made her way home, since the area had become increasingly unsafe. He wondered if she had observed anything out of the ordinary lately, but reassured him that there were officers stationed around her house, so she felt secure for now. Feeling puzzled, wonders aloud about the absence of her butler, while she calmly explains that she had specifically asked her butler not to accompany her. His presence made it impossible for anyone to enjoy themselves, as his behavior was always irritating. She expresses to him how much she enjoyed spending time at his place, confessing that it had been ages since she had laughed that hard. Her face shifts to a solemn look as she admits that losing her father has left her feeling quite low. Upon hearing those words, the boy found himself at a total loss for words. Suddenly remembers that she never mentioned this to him before. She had chosen to keep it from him, worried that sharing such upsetting news might worsen his memory loss. Quietly, she reflects on how the event took place about 2 months earlier, coinciding with the car accident that caused his coma. Comes to understand that this was the reason she had been so upset about losing him in the past. Despite her sorrow, she remained resilient, always masking her true emotions behind a bright and cheerful demeanor. The boy expressed regret for causing her concern, but reassured him that it was nothing to worry about. She observes that he remains exactly the same as before. The unexpected action caught him off guard. As she observed him, she realized he had grown up somewhat. However, she recalled that even in his childhood, he was always prone to acting impulsively. He would stand up to children much larger than himself whenever they picked on, fully aware that he was unlikely to come out on top. In a swift turn of events, he rescued her after she had been taken, yet she missed witnessing his impressive skills since a blindfold covered her eyes. Doubts began to surface, prompting her to question the specifics of how he had come to her rescue. In response, the boy skillfully avoided giving a direct answer, instead claiming that his appearance had frightened everyone who witnessed the scene. After witnessing him ruthlessly defeat their allies, behaving like some kind of monster, uncertainty only grew stronger. Even so, she believes that what truly counts is his courage to rescue her whenever she needs him most. Admitted that fear overwhelmed her when the gangsters threatened both her and Although his face shone with a radiance that the morning sun, her heart filled with true happiness at the sight. She expresses her gratitude to him for what he has done. With his usual confidence, the young man assured her that he would come to her rescue as many times as necessary. Her cheeks flushed a deep crimson, rivaling the color of a ripe tomato. Embarrassed, the girl, unable to hide her flustered state, demanded that he move closer. She takes out her phone and snaps a playful selfie with him. Feeling pleased with her impressive photo, she decided to set it as her phone's wallpaper as a reminder of the memorable day, unaware that her choice could spark strange gossip at school. Despite her uncertainty, quietly admits to herself that this will help her let go and move forward. His ability to express concern for her, even so soon after experiencing a life-altering accident, became apparent. She finds the strength to let go of her father's sudden passing and move forward with her life. The boy's face lights up with a smile when he notices her presence. Faces challenges similar to his own, and this deepened his determination to shield his cherished friend from their past even further. At that moment, surprise washes over him as she takes out her phone and reveals a photo of her father. A surge of shock threatened to overwhelm him as he realized the identity of her father. He checks to see whether the man is actually her father. She responds by noting that his memory loss must be severe, since her father had always treated him with great kindness. Wearing a solemn look, she recalls how many people in her life spoke poorly of her father, yet to her, he was unfailingly kind. She cherished him deeply, her affection for him rooted in the very core of her being. As gazed at the photograph of her father giving her a piggyback ride, remembered noticing that identical wallpaper after he completed his last mission. The realization struck him deeply, filling him with pain as he understood that he was responsible for taking his father from her. Noticing the sudden sadness on his face, wonders aloud about the reason behind his unexpected silence. As stood facing the daughter of the group chairman, the very man he had once murdered without remorse, he struggled to come to terms with the gravity of the moment. He attempts to justify his actions to himself, reasoning that was ultimately the one who fired the shot, and insisting that he never would have accepted the assignment if he had known he was her father. He struggled with guilt, realizing that he had unthinkingly trusted the Great Will's claims about Chairman's betrayal, and had believed that needed to be removed because of it. He is overcome with guilt, realizing that he was numb to his actions in the past, and has now endangered too. This leads him to contemplate confessing that he used to work for the very group responsible for her father's murder. He clenched his jaw in mounting frustration, struggling to reach a definitive choice. The following morning at school, he takes his seat in silence as the girls around him excitedly gossip about the arrival of a new transfer student, all wishing that the newcomer will be an attractive boy. Ultimately, he chooses not to share any of this with. The organization would continue to pursue him relentlessly, undeterred by the fact that he had merely disabled one of their lances. With no other options left, he commits himself to safeguarding her, no matter what it takes. At that moment, the teacher informed the class about the arrival of a new transfer student, and as the boy requested to come in. The hero immediately identifies the familiar sound of his voice. He gazed in shock, his eyes fixed on the lively boy with pink hair. Confusion filled his thoughts as he tried to figure out why someone known as one of the divine spears would show up at his school. He recalled the previous unhinged person who had targeted him. He realizes that the Great Will has dispatched this individual specifically because he disrupted subduction. Without warning, the boy shifts his gaze toward the protagonist, his eyes icy and unwavering, making it unmistakably clear who he has set his sights on. No one could deny that the pink-haired youngster was recognized as one of the organization's 12 divine spears and known by the Bident. A little while afterward, in the middle of gym class, excitement filled the air as students cheered loudly for the new transfer student, who effortlessly made another basket. The pink-haired boy captured the admiration of all the girls, who couldn't help but be enchanted by him. Meanwhile, his teammate watched in astonishment, unable to believe how someone so short could leap to such impressive heights. Brushed off the moment by complimenting his teammate on a great pass, then encouraged everyone to score another basket. Meanwhile, members of the opposing team grew frustrated, noticing that the new transfer student had somehow already become extremely popular among the girls. At the same time, remained completely alert, feeling suspicious about the Lance's continued silence. He could not help but question what kind of strategy the Lance might be plotting. The Lances formed an elite organization made up of the 100 most skilled assassins, each identified by a unique number. Among these warriors, 12 stand out as the legendary spears, all serving under the command of their powerful leader, Odin. Every one of these exceptionally skilled assassins possessed powers so great that they could match the strength of 1,000 individuals. In the world of assassination, they had the capability to overwhelm and defeat the military forces of an entire country without much effort. Only the most urgent and important missions called for the deployment of these top-tier warriors. Realizes that this can only mean their main focus is on going after. Lowers his gaze, sorrow clouding his expression as memories of his previous mission resurface. He realizes that the assassins are likely seeking the hidden treasure rumored to have been taken by the chairman. The thought continued to trouble him, as he worried about what might happen if chose to make a move at this school. He wondered if he was truly capable of safeguarding everyone in the room, especially his childhood friend, while trapped in the body of a teenager. After some time, the class regrouped in their room, yet the students remained excited about. They eagerly pleaded for him to join their karaoke outing. Quickly became very popular among the girls, and their admiration grew even stronger when he mentioned that he had played some basketball while living in the United States. At the same time, the hero observed the events unfold from afar, quickly understanding that would not take action that day. Determined to be ready, he reminded himself to remain especially alert the following day. At that moment, his voice reached him as she invited him to join her somewhere after the school day ended. The boy immediately turned down her suggestion, not allowing her to explain, and told her firmly that she ought to head home right away. Suddenly, a hand landed gently on his shoulder and emerged from behind, greeting the girl with a bright, friendly mention of her name. This immediately raises suspicions, making him certain that someone is truly interested in. Offered his name, but reminded him that his reputation as the attractive newcomer had already spread throughout the entire school. She wonders aloud how he could possibly know her name when they have never been introduced. With an easygoing grin, the new student brightly revealed that she was the heiress to the group fortune, identifying herself as a high school girl who had inherited the prestigious legacy. The situation takes her by surprise, leaving her momentarily stunned. She began to feel a wave of sadness as went on speaking. He explained that his father owed a debt to the chairman, which was why he had been told to take care of her. However, just as he attempted to ask her out, the boy abruptly interrupted. He claims to have injured his finger while practicing and insists that he must visit the nurse. The boy fixes him with an icy, unyielding glare. This persuades him to go along with the situation, and the two boys separated from, who glanced over her shoulder with a bright smile, expressing her gratitude for keeping her safe from troublesome people once more. Within a short span, both of them found themselves standing atop the rooftop, where gazed out over the scenery, expressing his appreciation for the beauty of youth experienced during high school's golden years. He glanced over at with a teasing grin, wondering aloud if it had brought him all this way just to make a romantic confession. Despite his playful question, remained completely silent, offering no response. Just chuckled at the remark, brushing it aside, and remarked inwardly on how adorable appeared when seen from such a short distance. He found it hard to accept that she was the chairman's daughter. Wastes no time, and insists on learning the true purpose behind the visit. The thought crossed her mind, as she considered whether the actions were meant to get back at the boy with purple hair. The transfer student appeared completely unfazed, and nonchalantly inquired whether he was truly responsible for defeating. He assessed his own body, astonished that he had defeated while sustaining just a few small wounds. Despite this, frustration grew as he asked his question once more, his irritation becoming more apparent with each passing moment. The assassin abandoned his facade of innocence, confessing his true desire to claim the secret treasure that had received from her father. This discovery leaves the boy certain that his suspicions were correct. Went on to explain that they were unsure of the true nature of the subject, and for the time being, were simply seeking more information. The man extended an invitation to the protagonist, suggesting he join their organization because his strength surpassed that of several of their assassins. The boy explained that their targets were always wrongdoers, their work paid well, and because he had a close relationship with, there was a chance she would reveal the hidden treasure's whereabouts to him. Flashed a cruel grin at, and cautioned him that this was an excellent opportunity, hinting that accepting it could be the only way for both him and the girl to survive after their run-in with the organization. He made his way over to the rooftop's edge. He extended his hand toward, cautioning him that any attempt to fight back would put innocent children in danger. The hero stands firm, unwilling to accept the situation without taking action. Without hesitation, he surged ahead, closing the distance to the assassin while unleashing a rapid series of strikes. Skillfully avoided every attack, moving with such agility that he thought quick reflexes could match those of a professional. At that moment, the hero succeeded in seizing the man's arm, making it clear that he had anticipated the assassin's attempt to use explosives. Signature weapon was a small cube, unlike any other tool among assassins. He expertly merged its explosive capabilities with his mastery of martial arts, creating a lethal technique that everyone in the organization recognized as his trademark way of eliminating targets. Hearing his leaves the assassin utterly stunned and unprepared. He quickly leaped backwards, shouting that this individual possessed an extraordinary amount of knowledge, far beyond what one would expect from the average person. Grinned wildly, his expression bordering on madness, as he revealed 6 additional bombs in his hands, making it clear through his actions that he intended to increase the intensity of the situation. Fueled by resolve, he fixed his gaze ahead, ready to face whatever challenges awaited him. He darted across the rooftop, making quick leaps as he attempted to grab the falling bombs. He swiftly reached out and secured the first 3 items without hesitation. The character quickly moves in the direction of the others. The boy swiftly vaulted over the wall, skillfully maneuvering his feet to intercept the other 3. Koda observes as everything happens before her eyes. The statement emphasized that was in no way an ordinary person. Without warning, he hurled yet another explosive down to the earth beneath him. Fido stretched desperately toward his goal, struggling to reach it as the assassin mocked him, insisting that he would never be able to safeguard all the students by acting this way. The hero reached for the cube, but it slipped from their grasp and tumbled down into the field beneath them. In the back, the crazed man suddenly flicked his fingers. The bomb detonates, forcing to protect his face from the powerful burst. Below, the students are thrown into chaos, fearfully fleeing from the unexpected explosion. Meanwhile, calmly explains that he set the device to go off midair so that no one would be injured, commending for successfully intercepting 6 bombs and referring to the explosion as a reward. Despite this, his anger begins to boil over. Interrupted him, producing additional bombs and demanding to know his true identity, as well as whether he intended to become one of them. After taking a brief moment to consider the situation, the boy responded by insisting that he was nothing more than an ordinary high schooler, and firmly refused any suggestion of joining the other person. His expression reveals real disappointment at the answer, realizing that won't be persuaded unless there are actual casualties. Instead of arguing further, quietly responds by mentioning a single name. Hearing that name causes the assassin to spin around, his eyes blazing with a fierce intensity. Revealed with composure that people used to call him. As the announcement for evacuation echoed through the school speakers, fixed a harsh glare on the boy below. She becomes upset with him simply for mentioning the name. At that moment, he exposed his true intention of stalling, leaving no time to react. The school staff made their way to the rooftop, carefully inspecting the area to ensure that no students had been overlooked. The rebellious teen with pink hair allowed him a 3-day window to make his choice about joining their group, making it clear that turning them down would lead to regret. Following the explosion, the school dismisses students ahead of schedule, and conversations buzz about how everyone managed to avoid injury despite the blast. Amidst the crowd, wonders aloud why remains behind instead of heading home like the others. Responds by mentioning that he still has an important task to take care of before he can leave. She is urged to remain at home, because there is concern that the explosion might have been a targeted attack against her. At that moment, announced with great excitement that security precautions had been strengthened and that he had begun martial arts training to defend, but his excessive energy ended up irritating her. Requested that send her a message if something occurred, and he nodded in agreement. As soon as her car disappeared down the road, he shifted his attention back toward, his gaze lingering thoughtfully. It was clear to him that his attempts at deception were completely transparent. At the same time, kept a close eye on the boy. He firmly believes that 2G would never allow anyone to tarnish reputation. As the local train rattled along its tracks, the boy silently wished that interest had shifted from to him, believing he might have successfully drawn attention away from his friend. Might be the youngest among the divine spears, but his impressive skills are not to be underestimated. With his fist clenched, he reflected on how he had become accustomed to living in his new body. Despite his progress, he remained far from ready to face a divine spear in battle. The idea unsettled him, filling his mind with concern that he could be defeated if they confronted each other in 3 days. Despite everything, his resolve to shield remains unbroken, even if it requires him to eliminate the troublesome, pink-haired rival. At that moment, the boy stepped off the train at station. He returns to the spot where he lost his life for the first time. He jumped onto the balcony, silently wondering to himself why he had bothered to come, knowing that would not be there to greet him. As the door bursts open without warning, he suspects that the organization might have arranged this as a potential trap. Nevertheless, when he enters the apartment, he notices that the area where the crime occurred has been up, even though everything else in the apartment appears untouched. At that moment, a sudden sound caught his attention, causing him to instinctively drop into a defensive pose, ready for any threat. Someone was anticipating the arrival of a killer. He was caught off guard to see his dog John standing there, tail wagging with excitement. John's face lit up with excitement as he watched the loyal dog bounding eagerly toward him, his joy unmistakable. The hero suddenly realizes there is a frisbee held tightly between his teeth. The scene transports him to memories of when he and used to visit the park together, tossing a ball for John to chase after. Tears well up in his eyes when he understands that the dog hasn't forgotten him. At that moment, he notices something out of the corner of his eye. He notices a photograph showing himself alongside, and John, all enjoying their time at the beach. The moment brings back memories for him of their road trip, recalling how she once admitted that she never really grasped what he did for a living. Had always wished for his happiness above all else. He expresses contentment with his life, declaring his willingness to lay down his life to keep her safe, yet an unspoken hesitation lingers in his words. Calmly points out that happiness is impossible for someone who has died, and she encourages him to make an effort to experience life at least once. Grief overwhelmed the hero, his tears flowing as he mourned his inability to bring her happiness. Now, she lived on only in the depths of his recollections. Afterward, he heads back to his house and explains to his family that some people were forced to give up their dog because of tough times. He lets them know he brought the dog home and asks if they might be able to keep it. Taro quickly accepts the idea of adopting the dog before any more negotiations can take place, and Kyoto proposes that they share the responsibility of walking it by taking turns. When questioned about the dog's name, he shares that the previous owners had named the animal John. Later on, he sends a message too, wondering if anything has occurred so far. She remarked that life had become quite dull lately. Bringing up his new dog, she expressed interest in meeting the pet and wondered if she could visit to play with it. However, he responded by telling her that it wasn't a good time for her to come over. He grinned at his phone, fully aware of the task that awaited him. Following that, he reaches out to contact a member of the person taunts him, questioning whether he has decided differently since the 3-day deadline has not yet passed. The boy announced that he was finished with the games and prepared to leave. Before the sun rose, someone prepared to confront on the rooftop, intent on teaching them a lesson. He was determined to bring everything to a close for good, relying on his identity as. Upon learning the name, Se's anger boiled over, driving him to crush the phone in his grasp until it shattered. In his thoughts, he believed that would always fall short when measured against Lord. He embodied everything a flawless assassin should be, yet boldly chose to call himself right before his eyes. 3 years prior, somewhere in the Middle East, both of them embarked on a perilous assignment side by side. At one moment, committed a significant error. This situation resulted in him being encircled on all sides by his foes. His left arm had been shattered beyond recognition, and as the life drained from him, he braced himself to face death. Emerged without warning, and swiftly defeated all of the opponents before anyone could react. Expressed his gratitude, admitting that he had only reached this point due to the help of the other's blast, and encouraged him to come back safely, assuring him that he would handle the mission from then on. The following day, the pair found themselves together on the rooftop. Nonchalantly wondered aloud about his decision to show up for a fight dressed in his school uniform. Explained that his strategy was to overcome his opponent before heading to his classes. Let out a laugh as she realized they had come up with identical plans. Since the previous day, he had something more to share. He couldn't help but notice that actions closely mirrored those of. He confessed that he used to aspire to be like, but experiencing the power of directly because of had changed his perspective. He had no intention of ever forgiving him, not unless he managed to scatter him into charred fragments. Wearing a sly grin, announced that he had a secret to reveal before their battle began. He discloses that explosives have been secretly placed at an unspecified location within the school. Due to the direct connection between his brain and his left prosthetic arm, he was able to trigger explosions in an instant, simply by moving his fingers. Should be defeated by this opponent, countless lives would be lost, and the sole method to prevent further tragedy would be to completely disconnect his arm from his mind. With just 2 apparent choices remaining, severing his arm or damaging his brain, the situation seemed grim. Yet, remained composed and revealed an alternative. He explained that if were rendered unconscious, the bombs could be safely deactivated. Upon hearing this revelation, reacts with genuine surprise and skillfully maneuvers to keep her distance from him. He reminded him that he had already mentioned his connection too. While prepared himself for battle, he clarified that his purpose was not to take his opponent's life. He had arrived solely with the intention of preventing the other's actions. Flashed a self-assured grin and questioned whether genuinely thought he was capable of accomplishing such a feat. Without any sign or signal, he suddenly lunged ahead and launched a swift strike. Reacted quickly, narrowly avoiding the blow. The boy realizes that his sole strength comes from his understanding of strategies and character. The abilities of this body fell far short of matching the strength and agility he was used to. Hurled multiple bombs upward, sending them soaring through the air. When the explosions go off, they are directed to damage his opponent's vision and hearing. Immediately after, he throws a punch with his left hand. Despite this, was already fully aware of the strategy being used. He narrowly avoided the attack and quickly closed the distance, aiming a punch directly at its chest. While suspended in the air, twists his body, skillfully dodging the incoming attack. He responds by delivering a powerful punch. Soared through the air before managing to regain his balance. Thought that moving backward through the air had been a smart decision, since taking a full blow from his artificial arm would have destroyed his arm entirely. Flashed a threatening grin as he cautioned that, if was indeed, then his abilities extended far beyond what had been seen so far. Felt the sharp pain from his fractured ribs, understanding now that these divine spears were foes far beyond the reach of simple technique or knowledge. Reflected inwardly, accepting that a life of tranquility was never destined for someone like him, shaped by violence. Still, he wondered if the fact that he continued to survive meant there was a purpose behind it. Regardless of his opponent, he always emerges victorious, never resorting to taking a life. He was determined to stay alive, driven by the thought of those who loved him. Fueled by unwavering resolve, he unleashes his most powerful punch so far. The two opponents launched a swift series of attacks at each other. Unexpectedly, a sudden, intense ache shoots through his head. Seized the opportunity and launched a rapid series of blows toward. Although attempted to dodge, several of the strikes still landed. He reminded himself that paying closer attention to his opponent's actions was important. Delivered a powerful kick. Slid backward across the ground from the force. The gap separating them grew larger. Launched a second explosive device and triggered its detonation. A tremendous blast suddenly bursts forth. He charges forward, determined to deliver the final blow. However, because can anticipate all of his actions, he has already made preparations in advance. Launched a powerful punch with all their strength, yet managed to raise his arm just in time to stop the attack. He let him know that the anger and urge to kill radiating from him were clear, yet such emotions would never shatter his determination. He would absorb every ounce of fury, letting it consume him completely. Noticed a strange feeling in the air, and quickly leapt backward to stay alert. At the same time, clutches his head, overwhelmed as his heightened senses allow him to perceive more than just the tangible items in his surroundings, but also the awareness carried by the assassin. Felt a jolt of surprise at the abrupt shift in demeanor, leaving them puzzled about what had just transpired. He believed he had struck from his blind spot with his final attack, but confusion filled his mind as he tried to understand how the student had managed to defend against it, almost as if the kid had predicted the move before it happened. He pulled out several additional bomb cubes, observing that the situation was beginning to become more intriguing. He leans forward, his expression marked by intense seriousness. He admits his uncertainty about his thoughts, yet assures himself that his upcoming attack will shatter his defenses. The boy moves into a defensive stance, quickly noticing that has begun attacking once more. The assassin with pink hair let one of the bombs fall behind, timing it perfectly so the explosion would propel the second bomb cube straight at top speed. A massive blast shakes the area yet. By quickly transforming into Jinwoo and moving aside just in time, the boy narrowly avoided the attack, allowing the item to detonate harmlessly just behind him. Observed the hero skillfully evade his powerful move and considered this feat worthy of praise. However, he reasoned that if the hero could have been eliminated so simply, there would have been no need to dispatch a top-tier warrior such as himself. The boy remains silent, refusing to respond, and braces himself for whatever challenge the pink-haired boy might present. At his home, John regained consciousness after the blast. His mother also hears the noise and tries to figure out its source, thinking it could possibly be fireworks. At the same time, on the rooftop, the pair continued to clash with unwavering intensity. Kept his fists raised in defense, his mind racing with the realization that, despite the impossibility of seeing us hands, their opponent was still able to anticipate each action. Understood that this uncanny ability to predict moves came from the fact that their foe had no intention of actually making them. He is familiar with every move his opponent makes. His muscles tightened in anticipation as he got ready to make his next move, but the boy skillfully anticipates that 4 bombs will soon be launched, each intended to explode just 2 meters ahead of his position. Right before the assassin could set off the traps, swiftly intervened, sending each one flying in different directions with a series of powerful kicks to scatter them. A series of intense blasts engulfed the entire rooftop. Remains upright, raising his arms to protect his face against the fierce blasts erupting around him. He anticipates where the assassin will strike next and swiftly moves aside, narrowly avoiding a punch aimed at him from the left. The hero swiftly counters, launching several precise jabs that push onto the defensive, leaving him struggling to protect himself. He begins to sense that something is seriously wrong with the situation. He feels confused and frustrated, unable to understand why every attempt misses its mark. The assassin reasons that should no longer be able to see or hear after the explosions, and the intense heat in the area ought to make it almost impossible for him to catch his breath. Despite his efforts, the intensity in the boy's gaze gives him the unsettling impression that his every move is being watched and understood. an experience that feels oddly unnatural. The sight triggers a vivid recollection of his cherished. He remembers the moment declared that he was Gong. That reaction triggered his anger, and he shouted at the hero, warning them not to mess with him. He urgently insists on finding out whether the high school student is actually his 2G, and if so, he wonders with frustration why this person has decided to show up at this particular moment. Meanwhile, fights to stay upright, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he holds his fists defensively. Although he can anticipate the assassin's attacks, he quickly understands that the boy's incredible speed overwhelms him, and his untrained body is reaching its limit. He leaped onto the ledge, determined not to flee anymore. Meanwhile, believed the guy had no options left to get away. Gathering several bombs in his hand, he decided that even if his actions were obvious, it wouldn't change his resolve. He challenges the hero to evade the incoming attack, hurling bomb cubes directly at him. At that precise instant, the hero focuses intensely. Summoning every bit of strength he possesses, he charges ahead, silently vowing to himself that he will never be the cause of anyone's unhappiness again. Triggered the bomb, causing it to burst into a brilliant glow. The whole rooftop glowed as brightly as the sun. Despite having lost his sight, continues to move ahead, unwavering in his advance. He detected the presence of the assassin standing before him, and swiftly moved forward to launch an attack. Narrowly avoided the attack, and quickly hurled the bomb cube held in his metal hand. A clenched fist hurtled toward the boy's face, aiming a fierce punch at his head. Nevertheless, anticipated his opponent's move perfectly, using his elbow to intercept the punch. The unexpected event leaves him utterly unprepared and, after blocking the attack, he quickly counters by driving his elbow forward with powerful force. He landed a direct blow, but refused to let that be the end. Shouting Sn's name, he charged after him without hesitation. He unleashed a brutal punch, aimed directly at his opponent's torso. She ends the fight by landing a powerful kick directly to his stomach. The force of the strike broke apart his metal arm and hurled the assassin through the air. Soaring past the rooftop's edge, he loses consciousness just as his body hurtles toward the unforgiving concrete beneath. The story then moves into a memory, showing the young assassin urging to leave him behind and escape to safety. The protagonist insists that he refuses to let any of his friends lose their lives. Realized that such a way of thinking was unusual for an assassin, yet this was precisely the reason he decided to follow that path. Regardless of the opponent's size, he remained determined to follow his personal code of justice. Slowly regained consciousness and looked over at, curiosity filling his eyes as he wondered aloud about the reason behind's decision to rescue him. He explained that his sole focus had been on disabling the bomb, and the idea of ending the man's life had never crossed his mind. The assassin gave a sly smile, confidently pointing out that facing the entire organization alone was an impossible challenge for him. Remained resolute, determined to persevere regardless of the circumstances. That was the only kind of justice he could grasp after living as an assassin. The well-known phrases and expressions could. The sudden event caught off guard and brought to his mind memories of. Asserted that it made no difference whether it was the Great Will or Odin involved. He vows to overcome every one of his opponents. Couldn't hold back his laughter after hearing that remark. He echoed suggestion, shaking his head and thinking it was pure madness to even consider such an idea. Was taken aback when the assassin actually accepted his claim of being 2G without any doubt. The boy grinned, thinking that a statement as outrageous as that could only come from someone as crazy as 2G. The hero stared at him with wide-eyed astonishment. The boy with pink hair shifted the conversation to the pressing issue, questioning why the other appeared so thin and alive when, by all rights, he ought to be buried deep beneath the earth. Explained that he, too, believed he had died at that time. However, upon regaining consciousness, he found himself inhabiting Spotty. He gestures toward his head, explaining that, at this moment, his mind is the only part of 2G that still exists. Suddenly sat upright, his expression revealing true astonishment. The protagonist goes on to explain that the person responsible for issuing the command for the attack is still unknown. The realization that it could only be Odin causes all the color to fade from his face. Stated with certainty that he needed to become stronger and turned to, requesting his assistance. The memory of that moment forces the assassin to relive the scene once more. Let out another laugh, urging him to be serious and stop joking around. He lifted his metal arm and declared that, regardless of anyone's commands, he would never be able to kill now that he was certain was 2G. The hero wondered aloud if he would be returning to the organization, but the assassin immediately dismissed the idea, insisting that returning after such a defeat could never happen. He then inquires about the child's next course of action, curious about what the boy intends to do. His expression shifted to one of deep concentration, as he explained that he needed more time to investigate the situation before making any decisions, still struggling to accept the idea that Odin would set his sights on. He urges the protagonist to leave quickly, warning that the authorities are likely en route, and lightens the mood by remarking that classes probably won't resume for a while. The protagonist observes as the other person walks away, and starts to raise their voice in an attempt to get his attention. Without warning, he suddenly falls to the ground. He tries to make sense of the situation, confusion flooding his thoughts while his consciousness begins to fade. At the same time, a group of mysterious assassins entered the area and began carrying out their mission to recover. A distant voice called out to the hero, urging him to wake up, while he puzzled over its mysterious origin. His eyes fluttered open and he glanced around, taking in his surroundings. He found himself confused about his surroundings, only to come to the startling realization that he had returned to his original body. The mysterious voice repeated that he had at last awakened and revealed that from now on, they would be connected as parts of a single whole. Drifted closer, causing his eyes to widen in astonishment. Shouted to him once more, urging him to use his strength to keep safe. Holds on tightly, calling out to the boy while stretching his hand toward him, determined not to release his grip. At that moment he suddenly awakens, drenched completely. A chill ran down their spine as beads of sweat formed, and they found themselves face to face with a cheerful dog. As he lay sprawled across the ground, confusion filled his mind as he tried to figure out his current location. Downstairs, the parents sat in front of the television, their eyes fixed on a news report announcing yet another explosion had occurred at the school. Both of them feel intense anxiety as they think about the explosion. As Kyoto read through messages, she wondered aloud whether taking him to the hospital would be the best course of action. He reportedly returned home earlier than usual and decided to rest, explaining that dizziness had overcome him. The father wondered aloud if she might be overthinking things, suggesting that was likely just worn out from all that had occurred. He comforts her by expressing confidence that their son will recover after getting some sleep. At the same time, gazes up at the ceiling, noticing the lingering haze in his mind, and coming to the realization that he has been asleep for nearly 12 hours. He recalled feeling lightheaded while standing on the rooftop, and the next thing he knew, he was back in his room with his injuries already bandaged. He remembers the moment when accepted the fact that he was 2G. Despite his frail form, he questioned whether his display of strength had been enough to earn the others' trust. Earlier, he had experienced an astonishing sensation, as though some emotions were being transferred directly into him. Without that intervention, his chances of survival would have been slim. He often finds himself pondering the fate of his own body. Just as he was lost in thought, his phone suddenly began to ring. The moment he glanced at the screen and noticed its name. He responds without hesitation, raising his voice to check on her well-being, catching her off guard. Without hesitation, she turned the question back on him, upset that he had not responded to any of her messages since that morning. He quickly apologized, explaining that he had only just woken up, and added that he was simply relieved to know she was all right. She goes on to explain the incident at school, describing how an explosion tore off the roof and led to classes being suspended for a week. He acts surprised, feigning ignorance about the whole situation. She notices that something feels wrong and wonders if might be involved once more. The situation causes cold sweat to form on his skin. She begins to reprimand him, accusing him of constantly finding himself in problematic situations, and even goes so far as to question whether he was injured in the school explosion rather than simply falling ill. Fido straightened up, silently recognizing that the girl's wit remained as keen as always. He redirects the inquiry toward her, wondering aloud if she has also faced any peril. He reassures her, urging her to let go of her worries. He resolved to shield her from any danger, regardless of what might come. His cheeks flushed an even deeper shade of red as she pressed for an explanation, insisting he stop sidetracking her with his impressive, heroic words. She continues her conversation upstairs, unaware that, at the same time, Smother opens the door after hearing the doorbell ring. No one is present, but a package lies on the ground where someone might have been. Not long afterward, someone rapped gently on his door, catching his attention. His mother wondered aloud if he was awake, mentioning that a package had arrived for him. She placed the parcel in the hallway before moving on. Feels uneasy about the situation, realizing he never placed an order and knowing that his wife is not a man. His mother calls out, inviting him to join them for dinner if he feels well enough, as glances at the time, realizes how late it has gotten and bids him farewell. Lifted the box, carefully testing its weight in his palm while staying alert for any signs of danger, though he detected none. When he opens it, surprise floods his face and his eyes grow wide at the sight before him. He notices his first assassin's knife lying next to a card. He tries to figure out who might have delivered this to his home. As he lifted the card, a series of coordinates caught his eye, and he resolved inwardly that he would go to any lengths to meet whoever had sent it. The protagonist made his way through the bustling streets of, carefully tracking the destination listed on the mysterious note that had arrived alongside his knife. He observes that, despite the area's proximity to the station, the number of pedestrians decreases dramatically. This observation leads him to suspect that the person who sent the note could be concealed in a quiet spot like this. He wonders if the individual responsible for his brain transplant could be involved, suspecting that is the one behind it. After some time, he reaches an apartment complex and instantly recognizes its potential as an ideal place to lay low. He enters the lobby and, seeing no one inside, continues on his way. He eventually discovers a doorway leading down to a lower floor and immediately grows suspicious, thinking it might be a setup by the individual responsible for sending the knife. Upon finally arriving at the basement parking level, he pushes the door open and walks inside with a relaxed pace. He questioned the reason behind being summoned to this location. He narrowly avoided an unexpected strike just in time. As he noticed an arrow lodged behind him, he watched as the crossbow wielder stepped out into the open with a woman at his side. The woman commented that it was impossible for someone to dodge the arrow by chance, insisting that the true would have no trouble avoiding even bullets. She observes that the young man's mind seems to be functioning exceptionally well. The young man, unable to identify the newcomers, wondered aloud if they were the people responsible for summoning him to that place. The crossbow wielder dismisses his request for answers, declaring him unworthy, and calmly prepares another arrow to shoot. He fired the shot, declaring that the hero needed to demonstrate his worth by overcoming their challenge. Just as danger approached, the boy managed to move out of the way at the very last moment. The character notices two luminous eyes, staring menacingly at them from the shadows behind. The girl launched her elbow toward him, but he swiftly moved back, causing her blow to connect with the pillar rather than her intended target. At the same time, he swiftly assesses that the pair possesses skills comparable to a mid-tier lancer, and as she prepares to attack once more, he skillfully blocks her attacks, all the while observing her closely. The group employed a traditional strategy, first firing a crossbow to create an opportunity, then finishing the attack with hand-to-hand combat. At that moment, the second man lunged from behind, throwing a wide hook. The boy quickly shifted his stance, launching forward to deliver two swift attacks. She delivered an uppercut to the girl's stomach, before swiftly following up with a roundhouse kick that connected with the man's chin. The force of the blow hurled the girl through the air, as the man remained in place. He stumbled backward, bewildered by the powerful blow he had just received. but quickly regained his composure and lunged forward for another attempt. He noticed the incoming attacks well before they reached him, recognizing the patterns just as he had during the previous battle. The character anticipates that the rival will begin the match by launching a sequence of 4 rapid attacks. The motion began with a swift slash moving downwards to the left. Even before anything starts, he understands that there's no reason for him to avoid it. He intercepted the initial attack. She thrust her fist forward, landing a sharp blow to his chest. As the battle raged on, his keen sense of space and quick reflexes became increasingly evident. Action prediction speeds up significantly, allowing him to dominate the 2 assassins without effort. The woman swiftly comes to understand that their defeat was not caused by a mere child. However, the most dangerous assassin in their ranks, held the greatest reputation. At that moment, the man holding the crossbow let out a laugh. The character acknowledged that the hero performed well, but made it clear he was finished participating. He starts to reach into his pocket, but his partner quickly shouts for him to stop, reminding him that their instructions forbid such actions. He yelled in protest, insisting that he could not simply walk away after experiencing such humiliation. Without warning, a new voice interrupted, urging him to halt, as someone he recognized emerged into sight. The group welcomed warmly, noting with satisfaction that his brain transplant had gone well. He immediately identifies the man as the doctor who works for the organization. She accuses him of orchestrating the brain transplant and connecting him to the secret organization, but the doctor urges her to remain calm. He clarified that, while he had summoned the person to that location, he was not responsible for performing the brain surgery. He went on to mention that he no longer belonged to the Great Will organization. She assures him that she will reveal all the events that took place on the day of his death. Still lost and unsure of what was happening, the boy looked over searching for answers about his identity. In response, assured him that he would clarify everything soon. Was informed that a command had been issued for his execution. The person responsible for carrying out the task turned out to be his partner. Hearing that name causes the hero's face to harden, a flash of anger overtaking their features. Went on to reveal that the order operated under strict secrecy, with only a handful of people aware of its existence, and he counted himself among those trusted few. He reveals that he was responsible for sharing the details that led to his brain being found before the organization could conceal it. Upon hearing this revelation, wonders aloud if has turned against the organization, and he urgently presses for information regarding the remaining 2 individuals. Explained that they belong to AGROS, a unique team working directly for the Japanese government. This group existed with only one goal, to destroy the Great Will organization. He also mentioned that most people referred to their unit as Argus. They were responsible for moving brain into his body. Upon discovering that the Japanese government had interfered with his brain, his irritation became apparent. Explained that assisting others was part of his responsibilities as a public servant, and responded with a courteous remark, expressing her pleasure at making his acquaintance. She went on to clarify that, in the eyes of the government, the Great Will organization represented their most significant danger. Chimed in, pointing out that brain had been kept alive for one reason: the authorities required his assistance. At the same time, finds it difficult to comprehend all the new information. Explains that their team had been observing the outcomes of brain transplant, feeling relieved when they realized his life didn't have to be taken. However, admits that, considering how things were at the time, it had appeared almost certain that would not survive. Upon realizing this, the boy wondered whether they had been aware of his impending assassination, and if so, questioned if they had also understood that safety was at risk. He fixes his gaze with an icy, emotionless intensity. The blade's edge appeared so keen that fear gripped. Hurriedly responds, insisting they know nothing about the situation and explaining that they weren't there when it happened. A sharp pain pulsed through his head, prompting him to clutch it tightly. He wondered if the mysterious ability to detect murderous intent could be another consequence of receiving a new brain. Before the others have a chance to react, he unexpectedly falls to the floor and loses consciousness. Everyone stood motionless, unsure of how to react, although worry filled the group. His curiosity grew as he thought about the strange power he had just brought up. The scene shifted to the headquarters of the Great Will Organization. Inquired whether had sent any updates, but explained that there had been no messages whatsoever, had even severed all lines of communication. Reflected on how challenging had always been, recognizing that members of the 12 divine spears had the freedom to act as they wished, provided they never opposed Odin. Wondered aloud whether one of the 12 divine spears could ever be overcome, but only laughed at the thought, surprised to hear such a humorous remark from someone like. He remarks that, aside from the possibility of facing Spirit, he finds it hard to believe that could be defeated by anyone. Acknowledged the overwhelming power that once possessed, yet he pointed out that had already died, and his remains had been taken care of long ago. Despite everything, brings up the circulating rumors that Argus might have uncovered something connected to the matter. The two men shared the same belief. If a spy was truly hiding within their ranks, immediate action was necessary to prevent the matter from escalating. Driven by intense anger, insists that Argus must be dealt with before focusing on the stronghold of. Expresses strong agreement. Meanwhile, the young boy suddenly found himself transported back into the mind realm, a place he immediately recognized from his previous visits. Materializes in front of him and clarifies that they are now in a realm created by the fusion of their thoughts. At that instant, realizes that he has finally uncovered who truly is. He wonders aloud whether this unusual place is a manifestation of his own abilities. In response, explains that he will soon understand how to wield it fully, so long as he discovers how to rely on his own judgment. 2G opened his eyes and immediately sensed that something about his surroundings was off. The experience mirrored what happened after his battle with, he had collapsed, overwhelmed by headaches and dizziness, and when he finally regained consciousness, it was mind that had taken over. Seated close by, informs him that they are now within one of his secret refuges, cleverly linked to the parking garage where they had previously been. Goes on to clarify that a total of 1 hour and 50 minutes passed from the moment he fainted until the time he finally regained consciousness. While remained unconscious, he underwent a series of examinations on his brain, which revealed that his neural connections were perfectly intact. Despite this, the brain was functioning at levels well above what was considered typical. The intensity increased further whenever a battle broke out. Believed that the intense sense of danger 2G was experiencing probably resulted from the increased activity in the brain. Although he acknowledged that consulting a specialist would be best, he felt confident in declaring that the situation was highly perilous. Cautioned him that the overload had already resulted in episodes where he remained unconscious for several hours, and if this problem persisted without intervention, the ongoing stress would eventually prove deadly. The hero rose to his feet with deliberate care, clutching his knife tightly and aiming it directly at. He icily points out that the man has yet to respond to the question asked before. He insists on finding out whether let be captured simply, as a way to bring him onto his side. Maintaining a steady tone, explained that he was unaware of the situation and saw no reason for the other person to direct any frustration toward him. The man wonders aloud whether the other would have chosen to die with her, his words hanging heavily in the air, just as the atmosphere grows more strained. Without warning, bursts through the door with a powerful kick. The man's voice interrupted, instructing the boy to lower the knife. Wearing a stern expression, he mocked the other man by calling out the Great Will Organization as a destructive force bent on ending the world, and pointed out the irony that a once mad member of that same group was now sitting there attempting to give them advice. Entered the scene and clarified that Argus thought there were 2 important elements needed to bring down the organization. The first of these, revealed, was. The second item was a revered relic called the Seed of, and they were resolute in their mission to safeguard it no matter what. Upon hearing those words, memories from the past instantly surged through the hero's mind. It reminded her of the occasion when pursued for exactly the same cause. He then wondered aloud what they wanted him to do. Upon hearing this, immediately seized the opportunity to tease him further, remarking that he was finally starting to sound willing to help. 2G's confidently reassured the group, making it clear through his words and demeanor that he was fully committed to dismantling the organization, regardless of whether they chose to join him or not. Found it easier to trust when there was a common goal, so he agreed. Afterward, outlined the strategy. The group intended to strike at a central facility belonging to the organization that the hero had previously been a part of. Very few people are aware that this place exists. This hidden institute was dedicated to studying Avalon, a project centered on the forced evolution of humans. The place also housed a unique group whose main focus was studying Seat. They realized that by exploring Avalon, they would be able to discover all the secrets surrounding the treasure. The boy suspects that following this path might reveal the real reason has become a target. He instructed to provide a comprehensive explanation of the entire operation. As the long-awaited day dawns, a plane glides through the sky, passing over a mysterious, uncharted place far below. Remained at his side, clarifying that successfully taking and eliminating the research would severely weaken the organization. The operation was moments away from commencing, and as he prepared himself for the task ahead, as the clock continued to count down, just 5 minutes separated the team from the start of their infiltration. With just 3 minutes left, until the helicopter arrived at the designated site. Looked toward, wondering aloud if fear was troubling him. Responds in a composed manner, expressing that he shares feelings. Inwardly, he senses that the long-awaited moment he has anticipated is finally on the verge of unfolding. Inside the operations room, moments before the assault was set to commence, outlined the mission's objectives. He clarified that the research facility consisted of 2 primary areas, a 20-story structure above ground and an additional section located below the surface. Once, this location functioned as a training site for assassins, but its purpose had shifted to conducting research on creating mutant assassins by altering their genes. Observed that the place essentially operated like a factory, transforming regular people into terrifying monsters. Went on with the briefing, explaining that the group's primary objective could be found on the 3rd floor beneath the ground. The most important data was kept there, containing essential details about the location of Seat. Explained that their goal was to recover the data and, if circumstances allowed, to demolish the entire facility. To accomplish this, the group would divide into 2 separate teams. One would create a diversion to distract the security personnel, while the other would secretly enter the building. Despite Avalon being a top-secret facility, its protective measures fall short of those found at a real military base. Nonetheless, breaking in will prove challenging because the team lacks detailed information about the interior structure. 2G stepped forward, offering to take on the infiltration task alone, yet offered a cunning reply, implying that everything had been orchestrated from the beginning and suggesting he already understood why had survived until now. Smirking, revealed that life would be used as a tool to achieve world peace. He explains that he plans to join him inside, making it clear that cooperation between them is necessary. As the clock ticked down to the last 90 seconds, and hurriedly offered their concluding directions. The man instructed all present to stay in their designated spots. Meanwhile, informed the group that she would take 10 individuals with her to the rooftop, while another 10 would move toward the main entrance. She outlined the plan, saying their job was to make a loud, distracting entrance that would draw the attention of the guards and to sneak in while everyone was distracted. Confidently, the hero promised her that they could handle it perfectly, then mentioned that he would be sneaking in from the southern side. When the ramp lowered, realized the dense clouds made it nearly impossible for him to see. The boy insists that he can unmistakably feel Avalon directly beneath their feet, as they draw nearer to their destination. Faced and declared in a booming voice that he would no longer answer to the name. From now on, he insisted on being called. As the signal was given, the mission commenced, and all the team members began leaping from the aircraft. The protagonist soared high above the ground, gliding swiftly through the open sky. Points out that the other person is moving at a pace that is too quick. He ignores the other person, convinced that they are inside a facility belonging to the Great Will organization. In this place where assassins undergo their training, he is about to discover the reason has become a target. As they arrived at the area designated for deploying their parachutes, all the participants deployed their parachutes and touched down on the ground without harm. His frustration flared at, convinced for a moment that their companion was about to meet a terrible end. However, he soon realized that such daring acts were nothing new for the boy. Irritated by endless complaints, the boy urged him to stash the parachute away before anyone could catch sight of it. Concealed among the thick bushes, the group carefully observed their surroundings, noted that everything was proceeding as had predicted, which gave him confidence that slipping in through the southern entrance would be a simple task. He informed 2G that he was about to raise the shutter. Without warning, an explosion erupted on the rooftop overhead. Relays information that both teams have begun the distraction, following the strategy they had agreed upon. She instructs the two of them to hurry and sneak into the facility. As raised the shutter, the boy realized that the moment he had been waiting for was truly beginning. With the barrier lifting, encouraged the boy to head out first, promising to stay close behind. Suddenly, the blare of sirens filled the air, signaling that this would be an unforgettable emergency. An urgent message echoed throughout the building, alerting everyone that unusual behavior had been detected. Security personnel were instructed to head straight to the rooftop and the main entrance without delay. Inside, the researchers became anxious, their minds racing as they wondered who would dare to target their organization's headquarters. With the security personnel preoccupied elsewhere, and slipped swiftly down the quiet corridors side by side. Felt impressed by and the rest, believing they were handling things well, but also grew suspicious about the silence, guessing most of the guards had gathered on the rooftop and at the main entrance. Without warning, 2G became aware that 4 adversaries were drawing near. He darts toward the corner and launches the first strike against his opponents. With a swift movement, he delivers a powerful punch to his opponent's head, causing the first adversary to collapse unconscious. The rest of the group began shooting in his direction. He reacts swiftly, delivering a single precise punch that renders them unconscious. Couldn't believe how quickly he had taken down 4 opponents using only a knife. He found himself questioning just how much restraint he had shown during his earlier battle with the 2 of them. She pointed out that the stairs were just up ahead and urged that they hurry. Observed the events unfold on a monitor, noting that only 2 individuals had managed to infiltrate the facility. Despite their small numbers, he acknowledged their impressive strength, as they had effortlessly overcome the enhanced assassins sent against them. At the same time, Omega comments to her that the men appear quite appetizing. He wonders aloud whether removing both of them would grant him complete freedom to act as he pleases. Longing for the same freedom that others enjoyed, flashed a mischievous grin and nodded in agreement. He went on to explain that Odin had given him an important mission, to defend Avalon no matter what happened. He expresses his interest in witnessing the others' abilities, explaining that if the demonstration is successful, the person will earn formal acknowledgement as a lance and gain membership among the 12 divine spears. Upon learning this, Omega becomes filled with excitement, knowing it will be his first opportunity to wield his powers beyond the confines of a laboratory test. He is permitted to take human lives as well. Meanwhile, urgently informed the boy that they needed to leave because the enemies were approaching, but the boy remained motionless. Despite repeated insistence that they should keep moving, the boy did not budge. Remains in place, explaining that this facility was created with the sole purpose of manufacturing ruthless assassins like himself through cruel and unnatural experiments. He then reveals his intentions moving forward. They refuse to accept the distorted idea that the world could only be transformed through the loss of innocent lives.